What's up, guys? Welcome to week 4, Flex Friday on a Thursday. I'm here with Andy again. Andy, how are you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Finally back in Montana, rocking the Aaron Ripkowski jersey, getting ready for Packers Lions on Thursday. You know, somebody's got to show love to the fullbacks.
You do. You always show love to the fullbacks. So we're each going to go over a handful of guys we like for your flex position today. So tune in after the intro. So let's just get it kicked off, Andy. Who's your first flex player for this week we're going to talk about?
So my first guy is somebody, you did not draft him to be a flex, but after the first 3 weeks, he has fallen into that category, and that is Najee Harris. Now, this week, luckily, he's going up against the Texans, who are the fifth worst defense against the rush this year and had the worst defense against the rush last year. And Najee Harris had 20 opportunities last week. Jaylen Warren is getting more involved, but he still beat him 20-12 in the opportunities department. So I'm pretty confident that as of now, Najee Harris is still the lead guy, and this is the right matchup to be able to play him in. I'm thinking he's going to get his first TD of the season, and it might surprise you because everybody's talking about how good Jaylen Warren looks and how, Najee seems like he's lost something, but Najee Harris is averaging almost a full yard per carry more than Jaylen Warren is on his touches. And it's only a 42.5 point over under. Pittsburgh is coming. It's a back-to-back road spot. They've got Baltimore next week, but the Texans also just went down and smoked the Jaguars in a divisional game. So I don't think, so there's emotions, I think, from both teams from the previous game. And this Pittsburgh defense is probably the best defense that the Texans have played all year. So I feel like Pittsburgh's going to try and run the ball, and Najee was going to finish as an RB1 for the first time this season.
Yeah, I can't believe I took the bait last week, man, with Warren. Like, I thought he was a good flex play, and then I was super hyped. Like, dude, Warren's going to play more. They're going to play Jaylen Warren more, which is something I literally never do, is read into those BS hype things. But I was so stoked. I was like, this is the week. And then once again, just like you said, man, it's basically a dead split. So I think with those guys, if you catch them in the right matchup, I think you could play them. Yeah. I saw a stat, I think it was actually this morning, that Najee Harris is top 5 in the league in percentage of runs over 10 yards, which blew my mind. It may just be because he doesn't have as many carries as some of the other players. But just like you said, I don't think he's great, but he is breaking some more runs than people think. And this is a great matchup. This is the classic Derrick Henry Houston matchup that you win championships with. So
yeah, this defense may have gotten a little bit better. The Texans' offense looks a little bit better, but they still haven't improved enough to not be playing running backs against them until they prove otherwise.
So I'm going to kick it off with my first one here, and I think where I'm going here, one more week of production from this guy, and he won't be eligible for flex play. But for this week, I think I'm going to use his last week of eligibility, basically, and that's going to be Zach Moss. He's been killing it, which is why I was a little hesitant to put him on here. But it's hard with the running back landscape. Like you said, Najee, like, he is totally a flex now. But like 2 weeks ago, I would have been like, dude, you can't put Najee Harris as a flex play. Like, he was your second round pick. Like, come on, man. But, Zach Moss, 46.5 over under. He's had 22 and 32 touches in his last 2 games, 18.7, 21.5 points in those 2 games. The Colts defense is pretty good. I mean, I think a couple years ago we used to think they were good. I think they've kind of returned to that. I think the new energy of the coach has been really good for them. So they've just been in a position to feed Moss on the ground. And anytime you get someone who's dominating the backfield like Moss has been, that's someone you can play in your lineup, whether it's an RB2 or a flex play.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. The fact that he had 30 carries last week, I mean, there are not very many running backs who are going to get that many opportunities. So no matter what the matchup is, if you have a guy who's going to get the ball that many times, you kind of just have to play him.
And from all looks about it, like Richardson's coming back this week, even though Gardner looked fine last week, but Richardson is better for that offense than Minshew long term. So, I think he's worth throwing in there.
Yeah, I think that's a fair play.
Okay, who's your number 2?
So coming up next, it's a guy, almost put him in last week, really should have. It's a gross play, and that's old man Adam Thielen. Now, he looked like his old self last week in this battle of the 0-3 teams. And here, going against his former team for a little bit of a revenge angle. It's in Carolina, which I like. And honestly, still kind of hope that the Red Rocket is still back there, because Adam Thielen was targeted 14 times, had 11 receptions. And with Jonathan Mingo going out, he is the wide receiver 1 for this team. The Vikings are going to put up points. They're going to have to throw it. He's their guy. I feel like Adam Thielen is really going to get up for this game. He's going to want to, I don't know if stick it to Minnesota is the right words, but, you always want to play good against the team that you used to play for. Vikings are 3rd in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver. And yeah, just the target machine that he is, and the fact that he showed that he still has a little bit of juice left in that squeeze.
Yeah, I am very happy I wasn't playing against Adam Thielen last week in any leagues, because I would have been just annoyed. You would have been like, you've got to be kidding me. I just lost to a 27 bomb from Adam Thielen or whatever. But for some reason, like you said, dude, he racked up ton of targets, ton of catches. He seems to be the one on that team. I mean, he lost a step since Minnesota, but he still knows what he's doing. Like, he's a good route runner, and he's in the right place at the right time. I do hope Dalton is there, just because, like you said, I think it's a little more pass heavy, and I think Thielen and Dalton are a good combo. My guess is Bryce probably comes back if he practices this week, because they want him to get the reps. But even then, anything against Minnesota is totally worth a flex play.
Yeah, I think at this point, there's certain defenses where if you're on the fence between a couple of guys, just play the guy who's playing that defense, because they're going to have more opportunities.
So I'm going to go with my first wide receiver for the week, and that's going to be Elijah Moore against Baltimore. This is a lower over-under, 40.5. I think they're just assuming, classic AFC battle here between these two teams. But Elijah Moore is coming off back-to-back games with 9 targets, and he's had a rushing attempt in every game this season. He's no Debo, but, an extra touch is an extra touch. And I think for me, without Chubb on the field, it does look like the Browns have gone a little more pass happy. Now, it was against Tennessee, and the way to beat Tennessee is through throwing, not running. But I just don't think it was on accident. I mean, Ford has looked good, but he's not Nick Chubb. And so just from watching the game, it looks like there were a lot more game-planned touches to Elijah Moore based on Nick Chubb not being there. He's a good player. Get him in space. Let him make some plays. And, 18 targets in 2 weeks, I think you could do a lot worse than that in your flex position. And it might not be the highest scoring game, but I just think it's a good play. I think this might be his week. He finally breaks, maybe he gets a touchdown, maybe he breaks one.
Yeah, and I mean, Elijah Moore was so hyped after his rookie season for the Jets before Garrett Wilson came into town. And he's still that same player who balled out his rookie year. And I think that people, after the down year and being traded, I think he's somebody who can still bounce back and be a great receiver in this league. And the fact that now he's getting opportunities, and that's a good move.
Yeah.
Yeah. So coming up next, we got Jakobi Meyers. And Devontae Adams last week showed why, in my opinion, he's still the best wide receiver in the NFL. But Myers was coming off a concussion and still had a pretty solid role in that offense. He had 12 targets, 7 catches, 85 yards, just didn't get in the end zone, but that's still great volume for a wide receiver too, for somebody you're putting in your flex. And this week, they get to play the San Diego Superchargers, which have allowed the most points to the wide receiver this year. It's a 48-point over-under. It's the second highest on the week. And back in week 1, he had 2 touchdowns. So they're not afraid to look his way in the red zone, even though they still have Devontae Adams on that team. They got Josh Jacobs, who's been struggling a little bit. So I think Jakobi Meyers is a guy who's going to keep getting these targets in this offense, at least until they can get the run game going a little bit better. And he's proven that he's a good wide receiver.
Yeah, I love it. Talked about him last week. Exact logic you're using here. He was involved week 1. He sat out week 2 with the concussion. He was involved week 3. And I just see it moving forward. The Raiders are not a good enough team that they're going to be in control and be able to pound the ball with Jacobs 30 touches a game most weeks. So with that game script, Myers will have to be involved. Adams, just completely nasty, man. That route he ran in the end zone where he almost like did like a little spin move. I don't even know what it was, but it just was like, oh, he's open. Good luck.
Yeah, he's so incredibly good. And that's going to open up opportunities for Myers too, because defenses are going to have to focus on Devontae Adams, especially after what he did last week, showing that he's got all the juice still.
I love it. I'm actually going to target another guy in that same game. Like you said, 48 over under, and I'm going to go with someone from Los Angeles, and that's going to be Josh Palmer. I think most people probably just picked up Palmer this week with the Mike Williams injury, and I say you picked him up. I think it's time to get him out there. He had a good game last week, 7 targets, 66 yards, and a touchdown, and he just should be in your lineup, right? Like the Chargers are going to pass. Eckler seems to be on his way to playing, but even then, he's probably going to be 60, 70%. They're probably not going to run him out there and want to just pound Eckler. But Palmer's going to get targets. He always has a shot for a touchdown with Herbert in that passing offense. And like you said, this game could be a little pass happy. And I think it's a great thing with Palmer. I think he's a great flex guy, wide receiver 3. That's his role. And he was solid last year filling in for Allen and Williams as they kind of went in and out of the lineup. I'm not expecting fireworks every week from this guy, but if you added him, you play him because you needed him.
Yeah, I agree with that take. And, the Raiders don't have a great pass defense either. The Chargers love passing the football. So, yeah, I think he's a guy that you can start up.
Okay, so let's move on to our quarterback tight end portion of the show. For those that haven't tuned in, basically we give you more of a quote-unquote streaming option for quarterback and tight end. I don't really expect anyone to be playing these guys in their flex position unless you're just completely desperate, but I really don't recommend it then. So, Andy, who are we going to go with for tight end this week?
So this week, we're going with my guy, Luke Musgrave for the Green Bay Packers. I think this Thursday night matchup is going to be great for both tight ends. I mean, Sam Laporta is already putting up big numbers, and it's a 46.5 point over-under, and the Lions have allowed the 3rd most points to the tight end position this year, despite playing against the Chiefs without Kelsey, the Seahawks, and the Falcons, who forgot that they drafted Kyle Pitts in the top 5. And Musgrave has been sneakily getting a lot of opportunities in that offense, and he hasn't hit on any of the big ones yet. But every single game, there's been a play where he's been wide open, and that's just one of the throws that Jordan Love winds up missing. Last week he was running this deep post, in between cover 2 and was wide open, and Love just barely missed him on that throw. And he's going to connect with one of these and have a monster game. I think this could be this week. LaFleur's putting him in motion. He's running routes on the outside. Like, they want him to be a fundamental part of this offense. And this is a great opportunity for him to really come onto the scene.
Yeah, I couldn't believe Love missed him on that throw during the game. It was such a pretty play, especially when you got that like back angle where you saw it right through the cover 2, and you were just like, dude, this is just like I do it in Madden, 4 verts right up the field. Like, he's wide open. Love, you got to make that throw. But like you said, he makes that catch. He ends with 5 for 80 instead of 4 for like 45 or something, I think was around his line off the top of my head, 4 for 50 or something. But
8 targets last week, and I want to say 6 receptions, but they're trying to get him involved.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see too, with hopefully Watson coming back, how that affects the offense. But I tend to think, and I'm more of a believer, that I don't think you should run away from players if there's another good player on the field. Like, the more points that your team is scoring, those are the guys you want. Who cares if they're having to share the load, because they just have a higher upside.
Yeah, if it increases a team's opportunity to score touchdowns, better chance that your guy's going to be scoring a touchdown.
So I'm going to go with someone from a game we talked about earlier in the Houston game, and I'm going to go with Pat Freiermuth at Houston. It's only a 42.5 over under, like you said, or 42. I can't know if it's moved since I checked, but Houston's 23rd against the tight ends. This one is kind of on the edge. I do think people probably drafted Freiermuth to be their starter, but he's just been off to a pretty slow start. He did score last week, which is kind of what I'm basing this on. I think it's just more of a gut feeling that the Pittsburgh offense looks a little better. I think they had some really hard games. You know, San Fran is not an easy matchup. No one thought they were going to succeed against San Fran. And so last week they got Vegas, which is a much easier game. And Pickett looked a little better. You know, he threw for a couple touchdowns. They're not going to be a top 5 unit or anything. But I just think Pat Freiermuth is going to be a big part of this passing offense with Deontay still out. And against Houston, they're probably going to put some points up, and he's going to have a chance to score again. I think that's the one thing, too, with the Pittsburgh offense that people are forgetting is that Deontay Johnson is out. Deontay Johnson is their best route runner, their best receiver, their most targeted receiver. Let's give Kenny Pickett a little credit that he is playing without his best player on offense, even though people hype up Pickens so much. Deontay's the guy that made it move last year, even though he didn't score any touchdowns.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I mean, first week against the 49ers, second week against the Browns, and your defense scores a couple times. It's tough to get the offense going in a tough divisional game against a great defense. I think last week, like you said, we finally started seeing it from the Steelers on offense, and Texans defense is very exploitable, you know, both on the ground with Najee and through the air. So I like that Freiermuth play.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't going to apply to this next game, but Kenny Pickett, 5-1 in primetime. Keep that in mind. I don't know how that's true, but it is. So you just remember that. Who are you going with quarterback this week?
So quarterback-wise, thank goodness this game is not on primetime because this is the grossest matchup by far. I'm going with Mr. Unlimited, taking on the Chicago Bears after their team received the worst beatdown I've pretty much ever seen in the NFL. You know, but Russ had a few great throws. You know, he threw for a touchdown. There were a couple that were dropped in the end zone. And I think Sean Payton has the ability to kind of get this offense moving in the right direction. I have a little bit more faith in them than the Bears offense, but it's kind of a bounce back spot for both teams where somebody's got to win this game. And the over-under set for 46. So it's, you know, kind of in the middle on that higher end of over-unders. So Vegas thinks there's going to be more scoring going against these two bad defenses. Russ has thrown for over 300 yards back-to-back games. So, you know, it's only a matter of time before it comes together. And this Bears defense is the solve for any quarterback.
Yeah, this one has what I think, or what I'm going to call, it's got a sloppy 46. I feel like they're going to get to this over, and it's going to be disgusting. But it's going to be missed tackles. It's going to be wide open wide receivers. And those are great games to have weapons in because just like we saw last week with a couple of those Tank Dell touchdowns, it was like, dude, that dude was wide open, but he scored. It still counts for your team. Like, it is what it is. So I'm with you. I think I was 0.1 fantasy points away on a Russell over-under last week from getting this parlay. And I was so annoyed. The only reason he didn't get it is that they were just getting stomped. Like, but, you know, I'm with you. I think the one thing I would like to see with Denver is I'd love to see them use Marvin Mims just a little bit more. Like, he's obviously one of their best players. Like, he has a return touchdown, multiple big play touchdowns, and he's running the 4th most routes for them. Brandon Johnson, or I think it's Brandon Johnson, this random guy that caught the Hail Mary, is running more routes and has a higher snap percentage than him. I don't really understand why it's happening, but at some point that's going to change. And, you know, we're streaming. This is the life.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Brock Purdy against Arizona this week for my streamer. 44.5 over under. Arizona's got the 25th pass defense, so, you know, nothing to be scared of there. They did play a great game against Dallas, and I'm going to give them a lot of credit. I was incredibly impressed with what they did. Mm-hmm. And I think going into this year, a lot of people thought Arizona was just guaranteed to get Caleb Williams. But from what I'm seeing, like, dude, if Kyler comes back, like, this team's not trash. Like, the defense is playing well and is nerdy, and the sound bites that as nerdy as the sound bites are of their new coach coming over from the Eagles, like he's a pretty good defensive coordinator. Like they're playing super well, even with the choo choo choo.
I love me some choo choo.
Yeah, like they're playing well. But with that being said, Brock Purdy has just looked good. He looks consistent, and he just hasn't really put up any stinkers. So I think if you're streaming and you're looking for a consistent option instead of an upside option, Purdy's your guy. He basically throws for 2 touchdowns, 220 to 250 in every game, and 15 points. So just plug him in, play him. They got great weapons, great scheme, and they just move that ball up and down the field pretty easily. And Purdy just puts it in the right spot. And he takes some more risks than people think. So I'm going to give him credit for taking a couple of those deep shots.
Yeah, I mean, he's, picked up right where he left off at the end of the season last year. He's looking good. And like you said, his weapons, I mean, if you've got Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, McCaffrey, like those are all such phenomenal options to throw the football to that, I think he's going to be somebody that, you can stream him this week, but, especially as like a QB2, I think he's a really solid play. And, the Cardinals coming off that huge upset win, they looked good, but I'm still not projecting that they're going to keep doing that the rest of the year, especially against this 49ers juggernaut. So
what game are you going to be targeting this week as a high fantasy output?
We talked about it already, and just close your eyes, close them tight, close your nose, play your Bears, play your Broncos. Like you said, I think it's going to be a slop fest. I'm even fine starting both of the defenses in this game. I think there could be some defensive touchdowns, a couple turnovers, and I think the offenses are going to score too. For the running backs, the defenses are ranked 32nd and 31. Now that's definitely skewed for the Broncos defense, having Achane and Mostert just go absolutely nuclear on them last week. But, they still Brian Robinson still put up 87 yards against them in week 2. These teams just both look broken right now, and somebody's going to step up and do something. And hopefully these offenses can finally get clicking a little bit. I would start DJ Moore in this game. I would start Sutton. I would start Judy. All if you have to. There's lots of other guys I would rather play, but if you're in that, desperate flex situation, I think those are all guys you can put in.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Justin Fields is going to break a run. Just watching that game last week with the incredibly poor tackling of the Broncos, seems like Fields has a long one in him. But yeah, we already went over this one. I think I'm with you. I think some points are going to be scored. I think it's 2 frustrated teams that might just put up some points. So kind of going along that lines, at least one of the teams. I'm going to go with the Monday night game, Seahawks at Giants, 47 over under. Little prime time and the week. Seahawks defense is okay. Giants defense hasn't been too great. So I think the Seahawks are definitely going to score. And I think this might be a game where the Giants just look a little better than they have. Probably still no Barkley, which is a little scary. I don't love that for the Giants. But, it could be a good game for Waller. I'm definitely not trusting any of the New York Giants wide receivers. They are completely terrible. But when it comes down to it, I just think there's going to be some points scored, kind of similar to you say. It doesn't really matter how they're being scored, but they're going to get scored. So those are 2 games that we're going to target. Basically, thank you guys for tuning in. And if you need any advice, hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up on the old X. Andy's going to be here next week to do week 5 with me. But Andy, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Sorry, I think I froze up a little bit there.
No, it's all good.
That the internet out here in Montana, every once in a while it goes down a bit. But just to add, I think hopefully Darren Waller can bounce back, have a good game, and the Giants have got to get it figured out at some point. So
they did just get electricity out in Montana, so I will give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, we got the horses got to churn, go out there and keep the power going, turning those turbines. But
sweet. Thank you guys for joining us, and we will catch you next week.